Hi CS400, this video is going to cover how to write your own exception classes. So you might have encountered, well you probably have encountered, various types of Java exceptions like array index out of bounds exception, file not found exception, null pointer exception. These are all built-in exception types. This video is going to cover user-defined exceptions. So we'll write our own exception classes and throw our own custom exceptions. So I thought this would be best highlighted through the context of an example. So let's get started with that. This is a simple number guesser game where you get a certain amount of guesses. There is a random number that is selected and you want to try to guess that random number within your number of guesses. So I'll just kind of go through the code that I have first, and then I will make some changes. We'll use a custom exception type, and we will see how the code is improved through that. All right, so first of all, we have our array of guesses that's going to store all of our guesses as we guess them. We have our number field that will store the number we're trying to guess. And then we'll have these constants, the number of guesses we want the user to have, and the maximum number the number that they're trying to guess could be. And so within the main method, we have a scanner to get user input. We generate our random number that we want the user to guess, and we have a prompt. Here is our loop. So within this loop, we will handle all of the guessing, and we'll do this right now 5 times since we're giving them 5 guesses right now. So we prompt them for a guess. We store their input into this variable called guess, which then we pass into this handle guess method. And so this handle guess method will, as it's named, handle our guess, and it will return a Boolean value, true if the guess was correct, and false if it was incorrect. So you can see here, if that Boolean value is true, then we will print a little celebration message that they won the game. Otherwise, we will let them know that wasn't the number and prompt them to try again. And at the end here, this is outside of our loop, so they have run out of guesses and they lost the game. So now I'd like to go a little bit more in depth into this handle guess method. It's quite simple, but it really will help us when we want to create our exception class. So here we have a check to see if this guesses field, if this array contains our new guess. So we're passing in our new guess here, and we're checking to see if that value is already in the guesses array, which are the guesses the user has already guessed. If that's true, that's still not the right answer. Otherwise, we add this new guess into our array of guesses. And if that array contains our magic number that we want the user to get, then we return true. Otherwise, our guess is incorrect. We have a new guess, but it's still not the right number, so we return false. So the thing with this method is that we're returning false in 2 cases. This return false is in the case where we have a duplicate guess. This return false is in the case when it's a new guess, but it's still not the right guess. But we're handling them the same in our main method. What I'd like to do is create a distinction between when this was a duplicate guess and when this was just the wrong guess. So let's create our own exception class without further ado. So let's go to sidebar, create a new class, and we'll name this duplicate guess exception. All right. So now we have our new class. It's a public class, duplicate class exception. And here we're actually going to extend the Java exception class. Just like that. We'll need a constructor for our new duplicate class exception, duplicate guest exception, just like any other class. So let's do that. And here is where we're actually going to want to use the same constructor that exception uses. The way we do that is we just call super, and the last thing we want to do is pass in a message. So it's really helpful when you have a custom exception to be able to display to the user a custom message. So let's throw that in there. This will be a parameter to our constructor. And since this is a parameter to this constructor, we need to send it up to the exception constructor as well. And that is all we need for our custom exception class. It's pretty simple, not that much code, but it does a lot of work, which is great. You will get this error. Eclipse will give you a little warning that it wants you to add a serial version ID. For CS400, don't worry about that. It'll be just fine. You can leave this yellow squiggly line right there. All right. So now we have our custom class, custom exception class, and let's actually use it in our code. So instead of returning false in this case when we have a duplicate guess in our handle guess method, let's instead throw our new custom exception. And we'll have to give it a message. So let's just say, you already guessed that number. All right, and so we'll also have to add a throws declaration into our method header. So right here, we'll add in that this method does throw this new custom exception that we just made. All right, now this call to handle guess is yelling at us because we haven't added any code to handle this potential exception that we're throwing. So let's go ahead and add that in. So we'll add in a try catch block around all of this code, all the way up through the else. We'll re-indent there. And let's catch this new type of exception. We'll have to give it a name. So a very common thing to name an exception is just E. And then here within this catch block is where we can do whatever we want when this exception is caught. So my suggestion is to go ahead and print out the message that this custom exception has. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right. Now let's go ahead and put this all together. So I know that I haven't run this code yet, but I would imagine that you kind of guessed how it works. We have a prompt here, guess a number between 1 and 10. We have 5 tries. I'll say 2. That wasn't it. Let's see what happens when I try 2 again. Already guessed that number. Now I didn't show you before, but as you could tell from the from how we were handling the other false return, before we added in this code, it said just that wasn't it, try again when a duplicate number was guessed. But now we have this special message that we displayed to the user saying, hey, you entered a duplicate guess. this exception was thrown, this exception was caught, and we printed this custom message that belongs to this exception. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit of what custom exceptions are, how to write exception classes, why they might be useful. As always, I'm available over Piazza, email, come talk to me in office hours if you have any questions, and good luck on the next program.